Well, it seems like everything in our current political environment is polarized, but the gunfight might be the most divisive. In a recent cover story for New York Magazine, contributing editor Lisa Miller posed the question, can a gun victim and a gun advocate change each other's mind? And Lisa Miller joins me now. Lisa, such a fascinating concept here. For this piece, you partnered with a nonprofit Narrative 4 for what you called an experiment. Explain what it was that you were trying to do here.
Okay, so we invited 16 people on all sides of the guns issue to New York to have a conversation about guns. Each person we invited had a personal story about guns. One person had a daughter who was killed in a mass shooting, and there was a mom who lost her son in Sandy Hook. We had the man who runs the website that sold the gun that killed Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman's gun. We had hunters, we had police officers, we had people on all sides of the issue, and we put them in pairs, and we asked them to tell each other their personal stories about guns, and then to stand up the next day as the person that they were talking to and tell their story in the first person. So what that meant was a woman who watched her child get shot in a mall at a mass shooting had to stand up and say, my name is Todd Underwood, and I run the website that sold the gun that killed Trayvon Martin.
I mean, it's ambitious to say the least, but what did you expect to come out of that?
We didn't know what to expect. I mean, Narrative 4, they do this. This is what they do. They've been doing it for more than a dozen years, and they do it in schools and on issues around the country. So they have a tried and true tested method, but they had never done anything around an issue so divisive and so controversial. And we didn't know what to expect. We put the people in pairs and we asked them to tell their stories, and it was incredible to see how open some people were to this experience and how fully they embodied the other person's story, so that empathy or understanding really did happen in this absolutely breathtaking and almost devastating way.
Yeah, because I say ambitious because it really required the participants to step fully into the shoes of another.
Right. I mean, I say in the story, I didn't understand why you needed to use the pronoun I when you told the other person's story. I am Todd Underwood, I sold the gun. But when you see it happening, you understand that it really does force you to embody the other person's world in a way that you're not used to doing in your everyday life.
So we were talking off camera about this, Lisa. The notion is there was a lot of work that went into just putting these people together and getting them to open up in this way.
Yes.
It seems like that might be a difficult thing to translate in a more widespread way, but you say what to that?
Well, I say that there's a ripple effect. In the central pair in the story, which was the website guy and the mom of the mass shooting victim, who herself was shot 3 times. He friended her on Facebook after the whole thing was over. And now he's her friend on Facebook among all of her friends who are mostly gun control advocates and people who wouldn't understand him or his point of view at all. And for his part, he went home to Kansas City and he changed the rules on his website so that people who are buying and selling and chatting on the website that trades and sells guns have to identify themselves in a verifiable way before they can actually engage on his website. So it's not a background check, it's not what the gun control advocates want fully, but it's a tiny little step. And so both of these people took tiny little steps in the direction of each other, and all of the people around them have seen that happen.
And so what would be sort of the lesson, the takeaway from this experiment that you conducted? Is there one takeaway?
I mean, we were talking off camera, talk about empathy, we talk about how important it is, we talk about having compassion for each other and seeing each other as human beings in this terribly, terribly divisive time. And we know just how hard that is. We're all so siloed, we're all in our bubbles. But the takeaway is that it is possible. I saw it happen with my own eyes, and I'm telling you, nobody in that room will ever forget what they saw when these people transformed themselves into each other. And we have the human capacity for understanding each other, not as, people who are waving flags for particular issues, but as parents, as Americans, as people who want the best future for ourselves and for our families. And when we can find common ground as humans, we can maybe, I don't know, make some progress in a positive direction. That's the hope anyway.
We live in such a polarizing time. It was such a bitter election. What would you like to see from this new administration?
Well, I mean, I think more empathy, and not just, the Colin McCann, who is one of the co-founders of Narrative 4 and who's a novelist, talks about empathy as a muscular thing. It's not this sort of namby-pamby, kumbaya, we're all so nice to each other all the time thing. Like, we're not. In the story, we talk about Samaria Rice, whose son Tamir Rice was shot by police, and we asked her to have empathy for a police officer, and she said, I'm not doing that. I'm not participating in
really
that.
difficult.
I'm not going to tell my story to a police officer. And I thought, that's really understandable. But what I do think is that if we all have the strength to look at each other in the faces and say, we're human, and we may not be able to go all the way there, but we can go some of the way there. I think that's a big step.
Really fascinating piece and a powerful experiment, too. Lisa Miller from New York Magazine, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, it was great to be
Appreciate it.
here.